Welcome back. We're here with Glenn, who is an attorney and the CEO of Empowered Enterprises. Glenn, how are you?
Good. Happy to be here.
Yes, it is awesome to chat. We had a call with our friend Tony a couple months ago and excited to reconnect and have you on. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no, thanks for the invite. We did have a great conversation, and I think there's a lot of really good things we can get into today.
Of course, yes. So you joined a mock trial club in high school that actually inspired you to become an attorney. What caught your attention at such a young age?
You know, I think when you're in high school, when you're kind of developing, you're finding your interests, and what I found was that I enjoyed the people that were there, right? In fact, I had a crush on somebody that was there. But the idea is that you start developing these skills and you start realizing what you're good at. And one of the things that I was good at was confronting people in truth and being able to ask questions and those sort of things. And so at the time, my ambition was to become president of the United States. And as I go through mock trial, I'm like, you know what, a lot of presidents were lawyers, so maybe I should go to law school. And that's kind of where it came from.
That's awesome. And why do you think you had this, I want to call it a strength to actually be okay confronting people and actually wanting to pull the truth out of people versus I feel like a lot of younger people are kind of nervous of that confrontational aspect of life.
And they say that the majority of people, like 80 or 70 something percent of people, are like deathly afraid of public speaking, right?
Yeah.
That there's more people afraid of public speaking than actual like death. um, but the reality is that when you do have the opportunity to engage with others in conversation, whether it's one on one or one on group, or whether you give a presentation in front of others, or in the case of like mock trial where you're asking questions in front of a courtroom and that sort of thing, I think that you really find uh, your ability to connect with others and how that like resonates with you personally. And sometimes I definitely enjoy conversations with other people, but early on, as I was developing, like it was really a hard thing for me to do, to open up and talk to people and just my dad is very good at that, and that was always something. Um, but then what I found was that in the setting where I knew what my purpose was, which was to find the answer to this or get to this point or get to that resolution, then it just became almost gamified it for me, right? And then I started developing it kind of as a strength, and people enjoy what they're good at.
Absolutely. And I think having those difficult conversations is what moves things forward, is what, you know, enhances life and makes people think. Because I feel like if we don't have those type of conversations, even if usually they are very uncomfortable, it's something that we need to, just I think move as a civilization forward and kind of, just I, I feel like enjoy life a little bit and not just be stuck in our ways of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, we've lost a lot of the connection that used to be part of our society and our cultures, right? And I always talk about like the oral tradition that like the tribes used to have, where they knew their fathers and their grandfathers and like their entire family history, and then every time they met somebody, like there's this ritual that they go through of like
Yep.
connecting, right? And we don't do that anymore. Like at most, we get somebody's phone number, but even then, like now, it's all about texting, it's all about social media, and the personal connection with other people, I think, is extremely important. And it's one of those skills that if you develop it, you become one of the rare few that really can experience that world in the way that it used to be.
Yeah, for sure. And as an attorney, what is the biggest misconception people have about what you do?
you know, I think there's a lot of shows like Suits and that people watch.
Yeah.
They assume that everything is like full speed all the time. You're in the courtroom like all the time, and the reality is most attorneys, a lot of attorneys at least, especially non-litigators, we don't get to the courtroom very often. Like I'm in the courtroom maybe once a year. But then, I am meeting with clients all the time. I'm helping them with their documents and with their issues. And one of the things I think a lot of people don't understand also is that, I mean, they know attorneys are busy. They know that, we bill for our time and everything else. But I don't think a lot of people understand how often we're pulled into other people's problems, right? And so we really end up being problem solvers. We end up, a lot of times being on call for our clients and taking on a lot of stress that they deal with.
Yeah.
And I think that's good for our clients, obviously, but also it's a difficult thing in the profession. There's huge, depression, suicide rates within the profession. But I also think that it's fulfilling. It's a good thing to be able to help make a difference for people, and especially with the type of law that we do, because it's very preventative.
Yeah.
We help to avoid problems for people.
I feel like that's kind of the exciting part because I feel like most attorneys, as you mentioned, they're only called when people need something or when something really, really, really bad happens. So I feel like being in your position where you do, estate planning, trust, wills, like all that stuff before problems happen, I feel like it definitely kind of helps you build a better relationship with your clients versus just kind of being there when they need you or, something bad happens. And you guys also started with working or uh, you guys started working with clients um, internationally. What interested you guys in helping entrepreneurs overseas?
Well, there's so many. So first of all, in the estate planning space, there's kind of a spectrum, right? So there's attorneys that kind of help on the low end, just people that need wills and trusts, and then there's attorneys that focus on kind of the ultra high net worth clients, right? And they need complex planning and tax planning, asset protection, and all that. And we do both sides. We're one of the only firms that kind of covers both sides of the spectrum. But what we found was that in the high net worth, family office space, there's a lot of competition here in the United States. There's a lot of established firms, a lot of established attorneys, and there's a fixed way of thinking of people already, kind of having those solutions and maybe not approaching it the way that we would. But what we found is that in the international space, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that have interests across borders in multiple countries, and they're not getting the support they need. Right? There are solutions. There are family office kind of options within banks, within financial institutions, but there's not really a lot of options when it comes to legal counsel that understands how to work within multiple countries' jurisdictions and how to make sure that they're planning out, you know, their interests in Argentina and in the United States
Yeah.
and whatever, right? And then also, a lot of times it's not just legal questions, right? But it's the strategy of, okay, we have to have a team. We have to have a financial professional, a tax professional, a legal professional, and that's kind of the core of what we do at Empowered is our triangle of trust, which is law, tax, and finance. But where we can actually coordinate those conversations for people in the way that they need, and on the international level, there's a lot of need for that.
And I really like how you guys come from a perspective of not just I'm a lawyer, but we're here to help you, you know, build together. Like we can help you form a team. If you have tax questions, if you have, lawyer questions, if you have like other questions in general about business. And I feel like that's really important because I know for me and myself throughout my entrepreneur journey, it's it's very difficult to even find a CPA and a lawyer and all those things like individually. So the fact that you guys offer those services as a bundle and can help people, especially with defining your niche overseas, I feel like is a kind of cool little like difference that you guys kind of offer to the market that I haven't really seen before.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is, somewhat unique, and I've had at this time the opportunity to work with clients on every continent and multiple countries, like 30 countries, and most attorneys don't really get that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
I remember being in law school and thinking, man, it would be so fun to do international law, but how would I make any money? Like,
Yeah.
what would I do, right? And then now it's kind of coming back full circle where I'm able to work internationally. But that was always kind of one of the interests I had.
Yeah. And what is the number one thing you think people miss when they're planning for their futures?
I think one of the things is that we disqualify ourselves, and I don't think it's a good in a good way. We disqualify ourselves from the things that we probably should be doing. Right? We just assume, oh well, that's for the wealthy. That's for somebody who has a mansion. That's for somebody who has
Yeah.
millions of dollars, and I'm not in that category yet, right? and so we don't do the things that we should be doing, right? There's a word that that we're become very popular over the last few years, adulting. How many of us are actually doing the things that we should be doing as responsible adults in society, right? And one of those processes is just getting your finances in order, getting your legal documents in order. If there was an emergency, who could make decisions on your behalf, because it's not automatic. It's not that your spouse even could go to the bank and access your accounts if something happens to you, or make medical decisions on your behalf if something happens to you, right? The right legal documents in place first. And so I think there's a lot of these things that are relevant for everybody, and then people just think that they're not at a level where they need it.
Yeah.
And pretty much anybody who owns a home should have a trust, because otherwise you're going to end up in probate. You're going to end up in a court process for years sometimes. And I remember sitting down with a client. They had a trailer home. That was it. And they're like, I don't need this. They're like, I'm not that sophisticated. And I'm like, okay, well, if you don't have it, you'll end up in the court system. And it blew them away, right? Because people
Yeah.
don't understand the repercussions of not having these things in place. And I think that's really one of the keys is don't qualify yourself from proper decision making, from proper planning. Because if you put the right things in place, it's going to benefit you anyway. And by the way, if you want to leave a legacy that's a big legacy, especially a legacy of money, that's easy. Just go get a big life insurance policy. You're going to leave money.
Yeah.
But the point is that the money up, because if you just leave money, average inheritance lasts less than 7. Within 7 months, it's all spent. It's what, $10 million or $10,000, it doesn't matter. On average, it's gone in 7 months. So if you don't leave guidelines and directions and values and those sort of things, then it doesn't inform what your legacy really is going to be when you're gone. And that's what makes all the difference, is that planning process.
Yeah. And I really like how you touched on the fact that don't disqualify yourself, because I feel like, including myself, because we're not taught this in school, obviously, a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to wait till I get super wealthy to open, like open a holding company or open a trust or open a will or start a will or, do these type of things. And I feel like it's important to spread this knowledge of like, hey, you should put these things in place so when you do get wealthy, you're not trying to scramble around and then try to put them in place. And you you kind of touched on it a little bit, but can you talk about why creating a trust is so important?
Yeah, when we sit down with clients and we talk about planning, most people are not worried. Like, when somebody's on their deathbed, they're not thinking about, I wish I made more money, or they're not thinking about, uh, well, man, there's that report that I didn't finish up.
Yeah.
They're thinking about their loved ones. They're thinking about the legacy they're going to leave behind. They're thinking about what kind of impact they made, in the world. And those are the things that are at our core, I think, are important to us. So
Yeah.
in the planning process, it's important also to uncover and unlock those things. And even basic documents like your powers of attorney or your will or your trust, I mean, the intention for that isn't really so much to save everybody money. It's to save them heartaches and headaches and all the stuff that's going to harm them if you didn't have a proper plan.
Yeah.
So it's really not as much about you as it is about those that you leave behind, to make things easier for them and make sure that they get what they should be getting, right? And that they're not going to end up. So we heard a story, and it was a crazy story, and I'll try to summarize it very quickly. But there were these two children, right? Teenagers, 15-year-old and a 17-year-old, and their mom was a nurse for many years. And she was successful. She became the charge nurse at her hospital, and she was kind of the anchor person in the family whenever somebody needs help. She's the one to send money and send support and that sort of thing, right? And she ended up getting cancer. And so she was self-paying for a lot of treatments that her medical providers wouldn't give her, right? And so she actually did a GoFundMe and everything to bring in money to help for her treatments, and it just didn't work, and she ended up losing the battle to cancer, right? So she passes away, but before she passes away, she brings her kids in and she says, I wish I would have prepared things a little bit better for you guys. But I have life insurance. There should be enough money there to make sure that we're paying for the house. Do whatever you can to keep the house, right? And these are like teenagers. Like, I mean, they don't have this kind of experience. She passes away, and they think that everything's taken care of. So they go in to try to claim the life insurance money. And of course, the life insurance company won't pay out to them because they're not 18 yet. They're not adults. And so they can't claim the money. and they end up going to an attorney to see how they can, open probate to get the money. And the attorney says, well, it's going to be expensive. You need, money to open the court process. So they go try to raise it, and they can't raise the money because they had already done a whole bunch of GoFundMe. The next thing you know, they're homeless on the street, and just struggling, right? And a couple of years later, they're able to claim the money. Things, turned out okay. But those are like the heartbreaking
Yeah.
stories and situations that happen when there's not a proper plan in place.
And I think it's important to spread this knowledge because I know people that are my age, we're not even thinking of this stuff, right? We're not, this isn't even on our mind. We want to have fun, we want to do all these things. And then once you get later in life, like that story, you're like, oh crap, I should have put this in place. And now, like you said about the trust, it's not even really about you. It's more about the people that you're leaving behind and making sure that they're set up. And then you not only can put the trust in place, but more importantly, you can pass on that knowledge of like, hey guys, like when I pass away, do this, this, and this, and you'll be set up for life. And when you look at the American legal system, what is one thing you would change about it?
There's a whole bunch of things. The legal system, uh, it's based on precedent, and so a lot of it is very confusing, and it's intended to be predictable, but it ends up being very hard for the average person to know what kind of result they're going to get, right? And I would say that, when it comes to the law in general, I think that, what is intuitive for people and what people understand is like the norms of society. If that was like intuitive in the law, then I think that would make things a lot better. Just because then people would know, oh, I shouldn't do that. Oh, I should
Yeah.
do this. Like it's common sense, right? And nowadays it's not really like the average person breaks two or three laws every day, but um, but in that's in general. When it comes to like estate planning and kind of what we really focus on, I mean, I would say it would be nice in some ways to have like automatic defaults that people would assume, oh well, I'm married, so I should be able to do this, or I should be able to have access to this, or you know when I pass away, of course I want this to take care of my kids. And those defaults, you would think that in some countries that it's automatic. It's not here in the US, right? And so in some ways that would be good, but then again, then we'd have less work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's always that give and take, right? There's always, you want to give up one thing to get another. And I think, like everything, every system isn't perfect. And I think there's always things that we can change, always things that we're going to be able to approve or like improve about the system. And to go more personal, do you think the absence of God leaves to, leads to a downfall of a civilization?
I think it does. I think we are a Judeo-Christian society, right? Our Constitution was built on certain values that are reflected throughout the law, throughout precedents that have been set. I mean, people get so mad here about like Roe v. Wade being overturned, and it's like if you guys look at the jurisprudence and the law, it had nothing to do with any like political statements or anything. Like it's purely it shouldn't have been in place at all because it's a question between states' rights and federal rights, and government should or shouldn't get involved with, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times, we forget that the Constitution was built in order to establish a working society that will help empower people in the best way to live their lives so that they have the happiest and best results, right? And the most opportunities. And when we stray away from those core fundamental truths, yeah, there's a crumbling of,
Yeah.
of society, right? And I think we've seen a little bit of that, but we don't have. I mean, they always say that those that don't study history are doomed to repeat it, and it's kind of what we're seeing. Looking at ancient Rome and these other civilizations that collapsed, we're kind of seeing those same trends.
And how do you think we go about putting this idea of morality back into society?
I think that a big part of it has to come from moral leadership, right? And having success stories of people who have reached high levels of in business, in art, in culture, in politics or whatever it is. But then once you get there, first of all, don't hide your light under a bushel, right? Like, sure people know that you are a moral leader, right? That you are somebody who stands for values and stand out and let people know that you are unapologetic in, who you are and what you believe, because that empowers other people then to feel that they can also, be that kind of person. I think there's a lot of like peer pressure and like culture that pushes in on us to be certain ways or to hide who we are or do, and we need people who are unapologetic in some ways so that we also feel like we can do the same, right? And for a long time I feel like there was a vacuum where a lot of the people who were moral leaders are kind of standing off to the side and not saying anything and not speaking up, and they don't want to come across as bigots or anything, and so kind of stay nice and just quiet. But then what that means is that the people who are not moral, who are doing things wrong, who are the Epsteins of the world, right? They're
Yeah,
doing all kinds of shady stuff in the shadows. They're the ones that everybody's looking to, and they're thinking that's our world. Well,
yeah,
let's let them see that we have a lot of people that are successful, that are good people, moral people that can make a difference, and then you identify, okay, well that's somebody like me, or that's somebody that's and then let's work together and do good things.
absolutely. And I think the small things and the small actions that people share to them might seem very basic, but those are the things that inspire people. If that's you talking about the food you're eating or the workout you did, or you're going and you're volunteering, like I think if you present it in a way where it's like, hey, like this is what I'm doing and I'm providing value, I think just sharing that to the world will inspire people of like, oh shit, he's been working out for a month straight, he just went and volunteered like at this place, I should go do this. Or oh, he just got in shape, oh, that means I can do that. And I think just sharing your life and like things that you do in a positive manner, because you're exactly right, the people that are negative are much louder than the people that are positive, because the people that are positive don't speak. They're like, my life is good, I don't want to speak, or they don't even think about it. They're like, oh, I just had a great day, you know, that's awesome. And and then they go on throughout their day. So I definitely think that's important, that we need more people just spreading positivity and love throughout the world. I think for sure. I have two more questions for you. What type of legacy do you want to leave behind for your kids?
Yeah, that's a deep question. I'm using those questions to my clients, but I think that legacies come in a lot of different ways. In fact, we're writing a book on the types of legacy archetypes, right? And what kinds of legacies you can leave. And I want to leave a multi-dimensional legacy for them, right? Like obviously, I want to leave money. I want to leave, some assets. But really what I want is I want them to be instilled with values in business and in life. And for the most part, a lot of times during our lifetime, we should be saying these things. We should be teaching kids and sharing with them what we would want them to learn. And sometimes we just don't communicate it in the best way possible, right? But what I'm hoping is that they see, examples of not just me, but other, leaders in business and in life that are doing the right things, that are, making a difference. I want them to be able to use whatever wealth and resources that they have to make a difference, to do good things, and to become leaders in their own rights, right? And like we talked about earlier, don't disqualify yourself from certain things. I think we do the same in our personal development, in our professional development, and so don't disqualify yourselves from opportunities. I would have never imagined like being in some of the circles and rooms that I've had with, like working with statesmen and leaders of nations and multimillionaires and some of the top entrepreneurs in the country. And I think a big part of that came because opportunities arose where my skill sets might be useful or valuable to them, and I didn't shrink away from them, right? And so I want to leave that as part of the legacy, is that if you are open to the opportunities that the universe will send you, then they'll come. And there's something to in in the business world, a lot of times they refer to like the secret and that sort of thing, think and grow rich, right? And in the faith-based world, we talk about being open to what you're wanting, what you're praying for, and God will send it to you. Either way, the idea is that you want to be intentional in the life that you're living, in the impact that you're creating. And then I believe in the butterfly effect, the constellation effect, whatever you want to call it, right? Where whatever you do is going to create ripples that will make a big difference for others. So let's create as many ripples as we can.
I, Glenn, I love that a lot, and I love how you led with intentions, and I love how you want to instill the intentions and just the values. Like that's what you're leading with. You're like, yeah, money's cool, but hey, kids, I want you guys to have values. I want you guys to have pure intentions and lead with those actions. So I really, really like how you're instilling that into your kids because as a younger person, that's what we need. Like that's what I love to see. And I have one more question for you.
Well, let me add one
Yeah.
one.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of times people think, well, but how do I do that, right? So just some of the tools that I've put in place to help with that process is we do have a private foundation for our family. And every year, we do a project that benefits charity, that benefits, the world and that sort of thing. And they get to see that we're participating in that, right? And then in every business, part of the business plan, part of the structure and the business succession is what is the legacy in business that we want to leave, and I think that's intentional. It's important, and then we do have a trust, and we do have all those other things in place. So I don't think that it's something that's all that complicated, but it is something that requires some intentional planning beforehand. Yeah.
And I have actually another question based off what you just said, and then we'll get to the last one. But where does this want and desire to spread positivity and spread love and be an impactful force come from for you?
I don't know that it's a specific thing. I think my entire life has kind of prepared me to be where I am in life and business. And early on, ever since I was born, my father, I won't go into the details, but he kind of act with God, right? Like I was on my deathbed, as a baby, right, in the intensive care unit, and he basically said that if God would save me, then he'd dedicate my life to his work, right? And so I feel like to a large extent, uh, wanting to make a difference is just kind of instilled in me from when I was very young. But at the same time, I think we make decisions in our careers and in life that lead us and help us to be able to be in the right rooms, right? And so I'm grateful that I ended up being an attorney because I end up being in a lot of rooms where I can make a difference. I'm also grateful that I chose to work with people with their wealth and with their finances and with their planning, because I end up being in rooms that are very impactful, right? And I'm grateful that as I've gotten into some of this international consulting and other things, I'm grateful that I'm able to work with um, people from other countries and other cultures, because we get to then start seeing the lines that connect us. And I mean, we're working on probably 4 or 5 world changing projects right now.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And I just love your passion. And it's interesting you said the things you said about being a baby because I was born a premature baby. I was supposed to be born in March. I was born in December of 99. And I had the same, I had heart surgery and I had a lot of problems from there. So it's very interesting to see you kind of have that same background because there was a high chance I would have died as well. So it's really, really exciting to see like you came from that same spot and you kind of used those struggles to want to spread positivity and want to be a positive light because you could have very easily went the other way.
I think all of us, every day can go the other way, right?
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I think a lot of us, there's almost a fellowship of those that have kind of experienced that sort of. So we're brothers in that sense.
100%. I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with two people, one person from the past and one person from the present, who would it be and why?
I've thought about this question a few times. Most of the time, I allow myself up to five people, so it's hard to narrow it to what for the past and what for the present. From the past, I mean, you're going to laugh at this, and I'm just going to assume that we can all speak the same language if we get together, right? Um, but the person that I would choose is Genghis Khan. And Genghis Khan for me is just one of those inspirational figures that I think is often misunderstood. But the civilization that he created, which is the foundation for almost all of Asia and a lot of Europe, and he created one of the largest empires ever. But he also took from the best of every culture that he conquered and promoted based on merit and built some of the most innovative things that the world had ever seen up to that time, right? And so I think there's a lot I could learn from him. And then from someone who's living, I guess I don't know. I mean, I had to, if I had to choose right now, I would choose probably President Nayib Bukele from El Salvador. He's doing some amazing things down there. We're doing, a lot of work down there. I'm half Salvadorian, actually, getting my dual citizenship again from El Salvador. But he's just really making a huge difference, and he's a moral leader, like we were talking about earlier.
Those are two brand new ones. So I love those. And I did see scrolling through your Instagram that you did go down to El Salvador and do some work down there. So I was like, that's unique and very different. So um, I love it, Glenn. So that's all the questions I have for you. How can people find you? And what is one thing you want to leave people with?
Yeah. So again, our network that we're building is in law, tax, and finance. And anybody who does work with, professionals in law, tax, and finance, Triangle of Trust, that's really, what we provide resources and support around. And we can also obviously help with, estate planning, tax planning, asset protection planning, so on. So our phone number is 855-454-6789. That's 855-454-6789. And then if you, for whatever reason want to reach out to me directly, my email is Glen, Glen, at Empowered Network. It's IMPowered, so empowered with an I, network.com. And so that's how, you can get a hold of us. And I would just say, in the end, like I said, we're writing a book on the types of legacies that you can leave. And it has stories of people who have done it in the past, and it has examples and all those sort of things. And hopefully it'll be out soon. But one of the things that I think is important is as you live your life and as you're living intentionally, think about those ripples. And it's not just what we do here and now, because we're connected. There's a concept of the seven generations. We're connected to the three generations before us and the three generations after us. And there's nobody else in the world that will get the opportunity to have that same connection as you do right now. So what are you going to do with it? What kind of a story are you going to leave? What kind of an impact are you going to leave? And just remember that the angels in heaven are looking down on you and seeing what you're going to do, and those that are going to come after you, they're waiting and watching to see what kind of legacy you're going to leave them.
Well, Glenn, thank you so much for coming on, man. I appreciate you. It was a great conversation, and I always love to hear the deeper and getting to know you on a deeper level, especially when it comes to pure intentions and values. I just really, really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks again for the invite. Happy to. We'll look forward to more.
Of course. Thanks, Glenn.